All this latest episode of Appraiser does is prove the show is without a doubt at its best when it's serious, because the amount of joy I had pretty much post opening, because it was just kind of generic harem fluff, I was like, oh man, this is going to be that kind of episode. Said it last week, I'm not a huge fan of that. And the amount of like joy I had and how fast it skyrocketed once they got into a serious plot point, night and day difference. And the amount of disgust I had initially with just the betrayal of the dad. Because when you see a bunch of, like, I don't know, a few dozen people, mostly everyone there looks starved. Like, you can tell they haven't eaten in a long time. The daughter, the little girl, looked like she was relatively well taken care of. Could it be better for her? Of course, but you could tell she wasn't as starved as the others. To me, that says, oh, good dad, because at the end of the day, he sacrifices his own food to give to her, the little bits he has, because gotta make sure his kid's fed. Only for them to bamboozle us and say, now go get killed by the Hydra, honey. I understand they all had guns pointed to their head, essentially, because there's nowhere to go. Essentially, the Hydra was the one thing keeping them safe. It required once-a-month sacrifice. But I don't even like kids. But if I'm put in that situation, I'm gonna try to run for the hills in the opposite direction. If we die, we die. But what sick bastard would allow their kid? And the fact too is I knew that Lord was a scumbag. As soon as I saw the green-haired, squinty eye characters are almost always scumbags. And then they're like, oh no, he's a little goof. I was like, okay, I guess we're gonna... No, he was always a scumbag. He seems more dumb than anything. He's getting manipulated by a spirit. But I can't deny, this was a much more enjoyable episode than I thought it was going to be based on how they started the episode. But I will admit, despite me not liking the harem fluff of the show, I did quite enjoy the pantsing scene. I thought that was kind of funny, and how, I guess we can assume it's now canon in the show that he's packing a sausage between those legs, because it didn't seem like they were cracking jokes, but more in awe of the sword he was carrying. Of course, want to support more works and my full thoughts on these episodes, we got the Patreon, full and cut live reactions available exclusively over there if you're so interested. Like, I know this show isn't gonna really have stakes for our MC. The world, sure, I mean, we almost had a little girl get ate by a disgusting looking Hydra, but at the end of the day, when your MC can go into a village that probably hasn't had vegetation grown in years, you're not growing shit in that soil, and he, like some religious biblical figure, waves his hand, grows fields of veggies in the blink of an eye, and raises up an Attack on Titan style wall in front of a farmer. It's pretty clear your MC's broken. But the thing I kind of appreciate is it feels like, if I can give the show its biggest praise, is it's not pretending the MC isn't broken. Like, the world already assumes he's the legendary Dragon Slayer. And I think for Ayn as a character, he's pretty sure at this point he can, like, his opinion was, like, whatever is about to attack this village, I'm gonna deal with it. He's very confident in the fact that he's OP. Like, they're not even trying to make it seem like he struggled against, how many heads that thing had? Like 6 or 8? He drew his sword once, and One Punch Man sliced that thing into sushi. Now, do I want shows to be like this all the time? No, but if you're gonna have a show that completely breaks the MC to such a degree that you know they're not gonna struggle, I appreciate the fact that you're not trying to pretend he's not busted. And I think, if anything, this episode shows there's other ways to have stakes, even if they're small, and you're not gonna care about them overly much. There is ways to tug at your heartstring or make you as a viewer enraged and engage with the threat at hand in the case of a lot of innocent people. F that village. I do not agree with the fact that they were okay sending, like, if it was an adult, like, I admit I'd have a different feeling. If the adult was willingly doing it, understanding the gravity of it, and you can't even make the argument the kid understood. Yes, the kid understood she was going to her death, but she's like 6. You can influence a kid to believe anything's okay. She thought that thing was God. Like, you can't argue that was okay. But if the dad was like, hey, I'm going to sacrifice my life, blah, blah, it's different, right? But it's a good way to get the viewer engaged and say, oh, there is still a threat. And I think the idea of a necessary evil is an interesting one. So it really feels like the current Lord was thrown into this position after Dad dies or whatever. He's now in charge. Way in over his head, evil spirit is manipulating a weak-willed and not so talented ruler. Completely get how we got to this situation. And the idea that he's basically just building it in so he can take over this kid's body is understandable situation. But the idea that from, I guess, his point of view, it's unfortunate that once a month someone in a village dies, but it does beat, swarms of armies of monsters and demons coming in and killing everyone. It's wrong, but you can argue and see how it is a necessary evil. I just personally think maybe because he said he raised the taxes. Use the freaking money to hire an army and increase your security. At least attempt, you know what I mean? But he did have a point. What happens when you leave? You're no longer going to protect, and that thing was our only defense. Well, the answer is going to be we're probably going to cause a mass extinction of whatever amphibian things are coming our way. But either way, very enjoyable episode. I was not a huge fan of last week's episode. The week before, one of the best episodes. Exactly what I wanted this show to be. Like, last week's episode was more or less what you've seen mostly in the show, but episode 1 and the episode prior to last week, what would that be, episode 6, 1 and 6? 1, 6, and 8 just kind of confirmed that when the show's at its most serious, it's just its best, it's its most engaging, it feels the least generic. But when the characters are jumping around and having Sonnet, like, oh, you love this person, you gonna be with this person, it's just dumb. It's like, it's soulless, it just feels like mindless pandering. There is ways to make that stuff more engaging, and yeah, like the slapstick comedy of pantsing him and stuff like that is actually kind of funny, and I enjoy that stuff. But yeah, like the best parts of the episode was unironically when the girls weren't around. And it probably is because I don't really like most of them. And to be honest, the only time I really can kind of tolerate them is when they're one-on-one, because when they're all swarming together, it just feels like it's more generic, but when you let them be one-on-one, it feels a little more organic, if that makes sense. I like this episode. I wouldn't say I like it as much as episode 6, or the first episode, but definitely my third favorite episode out of the 8, by far. And if we could do something like this more often than not going forward, I think the show will be at a good enough point where even though it does have that cliche generic harem element, if you're mostly in these more serious stories or more mature stories, it becomes a much more enjoyable experience, especially because they're not trying to pretend the guy's going to get beat. Like, we know he's going to win pretty much every fight. You let me know your thoughts and feelings down below. What did you think of the episode, and what do you want to see next week? Let me know. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here, of course, ring that bell, and like I mentioned, full live reactions over on Patreon, and hey, while you're over there, I'll also give you a video shout out. So today we got Jonas Pierre, Stephen Thomas, MJ Minion, Brian, Azoff Montgomery, Lord Guy 66, Eds, Alunar, Ben Liu, DJ Samuel, Taco Tuesday, Benjamin Henderson, X Nico, Nugzio, and we also have Fuzzy. So I appreciate the support, everyone. Please take care, and you'll have a good one.